Hi there, welcome back. We are here for another episode of Real Estate for Real People, and I am so excited about today's guest. We are sitting here today with Krista Mallory from the Economic Development Commission. She's going to talk to us about how the Economic Development Commission kind of supports and helps the Central Okanagan, and exactly what do they do. But before we jump into that, Krista, maybe tell me a little bit about and our listeners about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Krista Mallory, and thank you so much for having me today. I am the manager of the Economic Development Commission, the Central Okanagan Economic Development Commission, which is a service of the Regional District of Central Okanagan. I have lived in actually West Kelowna now since 2006, and I have been working for the Economic Development Commission since 2016 and have been in the role of manager since January of 2020, which of course was an interesting time in economic development.
Yes, of course. Yeah, right in the middle of everything, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So it would have been tough. So tell us a little bit about what does the Economic Development Commission really do? People ask us all the time. And, when we get businesses or people coming here, we say, well, go on to Invest Kelowna, I think is the website, right? We say, go on there. That's a great resource. And people are like, well, what is that? What do they do? So maybe you could kind of just explain the Coles Notes version of what they do.
Absolutely. So we do live in a land of acronyms, so I'll try not to use them. But the Central Okanagan Economic Development Commission is a service of the Regional District of Central Okanagan, and we provide economic development services everywhere from Lake Country to Peachland and everywhere in between, including West Bank First Nation. And what does that mean? So we work to support a healthy, sustainable community economy in the Central Okanagan. And we do that in a couple ways. One of them is supporting local businesses. And we do that in many different ways, from a agricultural support specialist that we have on contract who works with farmers and farm operators on business development questions and issues. We have export development support, workforce programs, and then a lot of one-on-one services where we go out and meet with businesses and find out what they need, what resources they need. Can we connect them to them? Can we provide them information, connecting businesses to each other? And then the other side of what we do is working to tell the story of the region in other markets. And that is in one way to attract businesses to the region who can really add to our local economy, and then also to attract people to work in those businesses and bring their ideas to the Central Okanagan.
Amazing. So it's a lot. And you manage all of that. My goodness.
It's a lot. We've got a great team.
And so when you are going out to try to find businesses and attract people to the Okanagan, because it's kind of similar to what we do in a sense, we actively promote the Kelowna area. I mean, I feel we're so fortunate to live here. I mean, we get to live in paradise every day. And so, we're with our properties that we list, we're actively going out there to try to find buyers and convince them that, this is the best place to live, which you're sort of doing that as well. How do you go out and after those markets? And is there certain areas that you find most people coming from that you aggressively go after more? Or tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I can answer it in a couple different ways. But one thing that I think is unique about the way that we promote the region, and this was a real shift that we started probably about 5 years ago, is instead of talking about our golf courses and our wineries and peaches and beaches, as we usually say, which I think is fairly well understood, and there's a lot of people telling those stories in great ways, is we try and talk about what are the career opportunities in the region? How is the region growing? What kind of entrepreneurs and innovators are operating here? Because there's a lot of really cool stories that I am privy to as part of my job, but I find that story is less well understood. So we try and tell that story.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and we also take a partnership approach. So wherever it makes sense to work with others, we definitely do that. So we have a partnership called OK Go, and that's with Tourism Kelowna and Accelerate Okanagan, our local tech accelerator. And that works to tell the stories of entrepreneurs and innovators in a couple of our key sectors. And those are agriculture and viticulture, aerospace and manufacturing, and digital tech. And for Tourism Kelowna, it's important to promote the region as tell those stories and promote the region as a center of knowledge in those sectors to attract business events and conferences that fill up our hotels in the off season.
Of course.
And for us, it's entrepreneurs, talent, and business investment. And so we realized we're telling the same stories, and we can just have much more reach if we tell them together.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So that's kind of the approach that we take, and we do it in a lot of different ways. Our key markets are major Canadian cities.
Right.
So we are seeing traditionally a lot from Alberta. I'm one of those.
Yes.
As well as obviously other parts of BC and the coast. And I'm curious to know if you're seeing the same in your business, but certainly more from Toronto over the past couple of years. We've really seen that starting to increase over about the past 5 years, but certainly throughout the pandemic. We did our first foray about 3 weeks ago into the Montreal market, which was a new market for us and quite interesting. So we actually worked to promote a new Air Canada direct flight between here and Montreal. So in partnership with the airport, Air Canada, Tourism Kelowna, and Accelerate Okanagan, we brought some of our local entrepreneurs who have well-established markets, contacts in that market.
Right.
And we hosted an Okanagan experience where we had an intimate dinner. We're still in COVID times, so we did have to be quite cautious, but hosted an intimate Okanagan experience and had those folks invite well-networked people, business leaders in their network from Montreal to experience a paired dinner and hear about our industry sectors. And that was only 3 weeks ago. And we've actually had more than one of the attendees reach out and say, you know what, I've booked a trip. Tell me what restaurants to go to. Tell me what hotels to go to, and tell me what businesses to meet with while I'm there.
Interesting. So that obviously is a market that's hopefully going to be effective and have people kind of drawn. I mean, it's funny because, we find Canada is such a big area, of course. There's a big difference, a distance, between, but we're actually quite small. The way that the world has worked now, we're so global, and, it's not as big of a deal, I think, for someone to pick up from Montreal or from Toronto, certainly, or some of those places and move their business here.
Or expand their Western Canadian operations.
Yes.
And maybe Kelowna's a good fit for that, or the Central Okanagan.
So what is the message that you give to those people? Why Kelowna over somewhere else, or the Okanagan over somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that we've got a lot of stats and data. That's another thing that we do, is really curate stats and data and try and share those with both our communities and outside. But really, we are the fastest growing metropolitan area in Canada. And so there's a lot of opportunities. And where is a fast growing region in Canada where you can come and you can meet with the Economic Development Commission, tourism, industry leaders, university, elected officials, all in one day? There's really this sense of partnership and collaboration. And I wouldn't say we're emerging, because I say we already have emerged. We're there. But there's still this sense of community and collaboration and, working together to make the region live up to its potential and really take it to that next step. Yeah.
So easier, I guess the message would be it's an easy center to come and kind of get rooted for and find the information you need and have the support, I guess.
Absolutely. And there's lots of agencies, ours as one, but many others who can help to support businesses coming to the region. And we like to say there's no wrong door. So whoever you reach out to, we can help you to connect with who you need to connect with.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, something you had said is, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into the industries, because you had said aerospace. We talk to lots of people and they say, okay, so what industries? And it used to be, as you said, peaches and beaches. And it was, we were just this retirement community. Average age, I'm sure, 15 years ago was in the 50s. Now it's, I think, 45 or 43 or something along those lines. So we're getting younger, and the industries we have are becoming much more versatile. So we have a tech industry, and people always say, well, I've heard something about like tech or something there, and then tourism, of course. But you said aerospace. So tell me a little bit more about aerospace and then the other industries that we have.
Sure, and it's funny that you say that, because this was a revelation a couple years ago. I think I was sitting getting my hair done, and my stylist said, oh yeah, but we only really have tourism and agriculture here.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, I just spent today meeting with all these companies in manufacturing and aerospace and all these different industries. And it's just something that we've really tried to do a better job in sharing. And so aerospace, 18% of BC's aerospace companies are located here in the Central Okanagan.
Wow.
Yeah, so including KF Aerospace, which is celebrated, I want to say its 80th anniversary recently. No, that can't be right. 50th anniversary recently, and is Canada's largest privately held aerospace company.
And they're here. Wow,
And
that's so fascinating.
I don't have the exact number, but anywhere from 800 to 1,000 employees locally. Operations in other parts of Canada as well, but really the concentration is here in Kelowna.
Wow. It's so amazing. Like just little Kelowna. I mean, I was born and raised here, so I have seen so much change. But I mean, I guess it shouldn't be of a surprise to any of us that this is where companies, if they can become, established here, they will, just because it's a great place to live. It truly is that Four Seasons playground. But I still find it so interesting that we have, aerospace here and agriculture, you're right, has always been something, but that's growing too, isn't it? Like that's with all the wineries and everything.
Absolutely. And I think another one of the major benefits to businesses is connectivity with the university. So that's been a major driver of aerospace, is the ability to connect to world-class research facilities and researchers to help your business grow.
Of course, that makes sense. Yeah.
And same with viticulture. So the wine industry, UBC as a whole entity has recently moved their wine research center from Vancouver to Kelowna, which makes sense.
Yes.
So that is going to be a real boost to innovation in the sector and agriculture as well. UBC Okanagan was also recently awarded some funding to set up a clean tech hub on campus. And the research they're doing in taking carbon from mining tires and transforming it into components for electric vehicle batteries and all sorts of amazing things are just mind-blowing.
And so that's right here. I guess I just get astounded that we have all of this, here. So talking about the university is, I've heard lots of different things that the university, UBC in Vancouver, that's sort of maximized as far as accommodation and students and that sort of thing. So they're really concentrating on the Okanagan. Do you have any predictions or do you have any information as to where they're forecasting the growth for the Okanagan or what they're doing with that?
Yeah, I don't have the actual numbers off the top of my head, but UBC Okanagan's 40-year plan is pretty incredible to see the growth there. So I actually finished the last year of my university at UBC Okanagan when it was just a baby university and brand new.
Yeah.
And every time that I go up there, which is fairly regularly, I'm astounded to see the changes that are happening there. And I think a really exciting one is the downtown campus that is really going to be bringing that hub of the university and that student energy right into downtown Kelowna.
Yes.
And also the opportunity for businesses to collaborate both at that campus and the prime UBC Okanagan campus. I think that opportunity is just game-changing.
And when will that open? Or when does that...
Oh, you put me on the spot. I can't recall.
You don't need to know exactly.
I should know, and I did know, but I don't want to give you a date because I might be wrong about it.
No, don't worry.
In the next couple of years, though. It'll be a couple years, but it's well underway and a major priority, I know, of the university to make sure it happens.
And that in itself, I mean, that is a huge employer is the university. And then having another hub, that's going to create more and more jobs for our area as well.
Absolutely. And bring in more and more people with diverse and different perspectives, which I think is a great asset to our entire community.
Now, and what about the high-tech industry? What's happening with that?
Yeah, so a lot of people maybe have heard some of the stories, and I think a lot of communities across Canada and worldwide are talking about how they are the Silicon Valley North. And we don't like to do that because we're our own tech industry. So we're not comparing ourselves to Silicon Valley. We're our own thing. But the last economic impact study, which was a couple years ago, estimated that there was almost $2 billion in economic impact from the tech industry locally.
Wow.
And also over 600 companies and 12,000 employees and growing. So I'd estimate that would be much larger now.
Yeah.
We've seen some pretty interesting stories over the past year. So one of a local tech company that's grown right from its infancy, closely aligned with Accelerate Okanagan's programs, called Banana Tag. was acquired by a European company called Staffbase and are now the largest internal, so corporate communications company in the world.
The largest. Wow. And they started, part of them started here.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. So they started right here and have just had phenomenal growth. Great product. Another company, Two Hat Security, was acquired by Microsoft late last year, late 2021. And they do, and I'm not going to venture to tell you any technical details, but what they do is provide services to protect online communities. So protect, children who are playing online games from bullying and harassment and,
got you.
All the terrible things that can happen. So really making, not just creating jobs and doing interesting things in the tech space, but really making a positive impact and solving big problems.
So that leads me to another question is how much, and I'm sure you guys track this maybe, and I don't mean to put you on the spot again, but entrepreneurs, I think, we see it a lot of people moving here and they are entrepreneurs or they're looking to buy a business or they have some small business that they have. I mean, it seems to me amazing that, and maybe it's just the world in general, that people are starting their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs, but it certainly seems there's a lot of that here. Do you guys have any stats on that or do you see that, is that growing or?
It is. So I think the Okanagan has traditionally been a very entrepreneurial community. I think Western Canada typically is. And I think it's changing. The way that I see it changing is many years ago when we had a younger economy, people were entrepreneurs, maybe not because they wanted to be entrepreneurs, but because they wanted to live here and that was how they could make a living.
Yes.
Because maybe there weren't the career opportunities. And that may still happen. And we are seeing people who live here work remotely. That's certainly a big trend. But I see more and more people who are becoming entrepreneurs by choice because they want to start something. They have that entrepreneurial energy. There's other people doing it that they can learn from. There's a strong community.
Yeah.
So I see that growing and maybe not as much driven by creating a job because that was the only option.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the other interesting thing that I don't have current up-to-date stats for it, but as of about a year or two ago, our region since 2014 had seen above the provincial and national averages of level of growth of companies with 25 to 50 employees, which was really interesting.
That is.
Because we've traditionally been very small, solopreneurs, less than 5 employees, and that's still a big base of our local companies. But we saw sort of a growth in these growth stage companies. We were growing faster than average in the number of those type of companies, which tells me that these entrepreneurs are able to, not just start, but then build teams and hire and grow and create more opportunities.
And how is the Okanagan fared to, say, a Vancouver as far as for a business, the costs and some of those things? Are we seen as pretty competitive in that? Are we, would we be more expensive or are we?
Yeah, it really depends on the business and it depends on where you're coming from. But as of, and this stat hasn't been published more recently, but as of a few years ago, we were considered the most cost competitive location for business in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Wow. And so I don't have a current stat on that, but really depends. If you're coming from a smaller community with lots of land, then of course there's some cost challenges there. What I often hear from businesses is that industrial land is there's high demand for industrial land here because we're certainly growing, but it's no comparison if you're looking in markets like Vancouver.
Yes,
so it's all
relative.
True. But certainly seeing some cost advantages in office space and land when you're comparing to those bigger markets, which is where we do our marketing. So major Canadian cities and U.S. Pacific Northwest.
Right. That makes sense. And then, of course, it just is so easy when you have the university here and everything's relatively close. So it's not as though you're traveling a huge distance to get to that university or what have you.
Absolutely. And your employees aren't either.
That's right.
Which is a huge savings.
And you have the airport. I mean, the airport is a huge economic factor and driver, I would assume, for the Okanagan region.
Absolutely.
As well as the hospital.
Absolutely. And having everything so close. We haven't seen the new census numbers from as it relates to commute times.
Yes.
Those will come out in the fall. But last census, I think the average commute time was about 14 minutes.
Yeah.
Within the region, which is pretty incredible if you're coming from other large cities.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that's why we saw such a, when everything kind of shut down in COVID and everybody thought, okay, I'm working from home. I can live anywhere. I'm going to move there because the drive times, even when things change, is so much less than they are in Vancouver. I mean, in Vancouver, we've got friends. They've got young kids and they leave their house at, I think 6 in the morning, 6:30 maybe, drop their kids off at daycare just to get into the office. And then they don't pick their kids up until I think 6 at night just because of the travel times for work. So that doesn't leave a lot of family time. I mean, lifestyle is the number one thing that we see and sell here. And I think that's why we're seeing a huge push in these other companies going, yeah, actually that is better. I want to set up there.
Absolutely. And so we talk a lot about the business case for locating a business here in the Okanagan. But oftentimes what we find from companies, it's because the CEO or the founder wants to be there.
Yes.
They want to live there. And then it's up to us at the Economic Development Commission to make it conducive for that to happen.
Right.
Make it, well, the owner may want to live there. It does have to make business sense.
Yes, for sure. Now, one more question, and then I'll kind of let you talk if you have any other kind of parting points with us. But it used to be Robert Fine, I know, was involved with the Economic Development Commission years ago. And, one of the things, if I go back from way back then, he talked a lot about how they were going after companies or businesses down in the States. I think there was a little bit of looking at that. I shouldn't say he talked a lot about it, but I know at that point is when we had direct flights from San Francisco maybe that were announced to our area here. Are you seeing any of that coming from the States? Is that a market that you guys do look at going after? I mean, COVID is a little different. It's not been easy for sure. But future-wise, do you see that?
Absolutely. So we work, U.S. Pacific Northwest would be our prime market there. So we are looking for ways and always building connectivity between our market and Seattle is a big market for us. San Francisco as well, to maybe slightly lesser extent, but Oregon, all of those places where there's ties to our region. We work closely with our BC trade investment reps. So the province has people stationed in those markets whose job it is to tell people about opportunities in the Okanagan or throughout BC. So we work very closely with them and make sure that when they're promoting BC to these companies, that they know about the value proposition of Kelowna and are thinking Vancouver, Victoria, and Kelowna.
Yes.
And the Central Okanagan.
Yeah.
So we do that in a lot of ways. We work closely. We've had a couple companies with interest over the past recently that I can't really say too much about, but we do work very closely with those markets.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's, because everybody's always asked us, okay, the market's gone crazy the last couple of years. We're now seeing things slow down a little bit. Of course, interest rates, inflation, all of those things put pressure on the market. But overall, I always say, Kelowna's always going to be, and the Okanagan's always going to be a very desirable place to live. And I don't see that changing. And with companies or organizations like yourself who are continuing to put us at the forefront and make us competitive with Vancouver and Victoria and some of those other choices that organizations and companies have, I think will really help us overall as well to continue our growth in a good way, in a good fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about sustainable growth, not growth for growth's sake.
Yes.
But we need these. We need the jobs. We need people to look after us as we age, and all those sorts of things. So that's really important. And I think you're right that I heard a quote recently that the Central Okanagan is the most amenity-rich region of its size in Canada. So I think
I love that. Yeah,
our tourism sector really benefits us. So there's a lot of communities of our size, but they maybe don't have the international airport, or they don't have the university, or don't have the amenities that we do have in our region.
Yeah, and I think that is what makes us so unique. So we'll continue to be a desirable place, I think, regardless of what's happening worldwide scale, sort of.
Yeah.
So before we part, and I thank you so much, that's a ton of information. It's so exciting. Any sort of insider information or little tips that you guys have or any stats that you're wanting to share with us?
Oh, I have so many stats, but a couple things that I think might be of value to your listeners is we do publish many stats. So we have a data portal on our website that it's data.investkelowna.com. You can go in there, you can manipulate it, you can find out what the average age is in a certain neighborhood, all that type of thing.
Oh, wow.
And really play with the data. It's constantly updated as the new census data comes out. So some things are still a bit older, but as the new census data is released, that'll be constantly updated. And we also publish quarterly economic indicators that we track a number of economic indicators, and it's about 9 that we publish quarterly with some quick sound bites to just give you a quick hit of how things are going in the region. And one of those that we post is job postings. So job postings in the region, we have a program that scrapes all the job postings and compiles all the data for us, have increased 44.5% this quarter. So Q1 2022 compared to Q1 2021, and 65% compared to Q1 2020, which was pre-COVID. January to March.
Interesting.
So that is very interesting.
60%.
Yeah. And so we're really seeing that growth across Canada. We hear a lot about global talent shortages, but a lot here in the Okanagan. So lots of opportunity. And then another thing that newcomers might be interested in is we have a program called Connector. So we found companies were telling us that we hired this great person from Toronto, but their spouse or partner needs to find meaningful employment in the region for them to come.
Right.
So any newcomer, where we call them trailing partners, which doesn't sound the nicest, but any new trailing partner, immigrant, newcomer, young professional, recent graduate can connect with us. We'll match them with a well-networked local person in their field of interest. They'll have coffee, provide 3 more network connections to their network, and so on and so on. So it can help you build a professional network really quickly. We often hear people say it's all about who you know. So that's what we're trying to do with this program, is help newcomers know the right people.
Oh, I love that.
And accelerate that.
Because Kelowna is, I keep saying Kelowna, but really the Central Okanagan is still that small town, a little bit mindset. So it is kind of who you know. So to have programs like that are amazing. So where can people find you? How do they find Economic Development Commission?
Yeah, so you can find us at investkelowna.com, or we're on Facebook at Invest Kelowna, and then also LinkedIn at Central Okanagan Economic Development Commission.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. I just have to give one little shout out too, because I was reading something before we spoke, how you are, when you got into your position, I mean, you're quite young to be, managing the Economic Development Commissions, which is amazing, and female. And I think what I had read, now it was a couple years ago, I think, that it was your office is mainly female too. Is that right?
It's mainly, we have one male business development officer. His name's Bill Wang, so I can't leave him out.
Yeah,
but we do have a very female-focused team, which is quite unique in economic development.
It is. That's what I've heard, is it's very unique. So congratulations to you again. That is amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. So please tune in next time. This is Real Estate for Real People. Thank you.